Scotland's prison population rises to record high. Anyway, Scotland's prison population has reached a record high. The number of people in custody has been rising for many months and on Tuesday hit 8,430. That number surpasses the previous record of 8,420 set in 2012. The Scottish Prison Service said it had reached a level that raises very serious concerns about keeping inmates safe. As someone who's been in there, the guards don't give a crap about that. But anyway, in regards to, I wonder what's happened. I wonder what big changes have happened in the last few years that's caused people that just don't fit into society and commit crime all the time, or they're getting arrested lots and lots. I wonder what's happened. This change in society that's occurred. Who knows? Maybe it's the fact that so many things have been made illegal now. Maybe it's mostly people that are being arrested for Facebook posts and tweets. Maybe it's that. I don't know. Or maybe it's a demographic of people who just don't fit in with our culture and think it's okay to just walk through the streets sexually assaulting women. Maybe it's that. Who knows? But the Scottish Government said immediate action was now necessary to ensure that those who work and live in prisons are kept safe. The prison population fluctuates daily, but was consistently over 8,400 last week, according to the SPS. This rise in numbers comes despite the early release of hundreds of inmates to free up space. So basically, dangerous people are even being let out. And you're still at record numbers. Wow, what happened to society? What huge change happened? More than 300 people, half of whom were serving sentences for violent crimes, were freed in February and March after prison bosses warned they could not take any more arrivals. In addition to the record numbers inside Scotland's jails, the SPS said that more than 120 people on custodial sentences were being managed in the community through home detention curfews. Scotland's prisons were designed to hold 7,805 inmates, meaning that they are now accommodating more than 600 additional people, enough to fill another prison the size of HMP and Young Offenders Institution Grampian, or HMP Shotts. So there's all the prisons in there. I'll tell you the ones that I'm familiar with, right? So, Berlin, been in there. Pullman, been in there. Addiewell I've visited. I've had a friend who was held in there for a number of years. Perth, well, not Perth. It was the Ferguson Hall. I think I don't know if it's still there. It's not shown on the map, but it's a young offenders called. I think it's called Ferguson Hall in Perth. I've been in there to visit a friend. But anyway, the prison service said one of the key reasons for the surge had been the rise in people serving long-term sentences of 4 years or more. Wow, that's a lot of harsh sentences getting handed down. What are these people doing? But anyway, the long-term population has risen to 4,012, which is more than 600 higher than 2 years ago. And in contrast, the short-term population is roughly 130 lower than 2 years ago. The Prisoners Early Release Scotland Act 2025 came into law earlier this year, where people just don't serve their full sentences. They always get let out early. And that thing is, like, it can happen. Like, I know people that have been sentenced to 6 months and they were released after a month and a half and everything. Like, yeah, I know that. They were back when they were doing the knife stuff, like, a lot of my friends get sent to jail. Right. I never carried. Didn't have to. Bosh. I'm a hard man. Nah, but basically, back in the day, there was a automatic 6-month sentence if you get caught with a knife. Didn't matter. No ifs, no buts, no coconuts. Fuck, boom. 6 months. Automatic sentence. The prisons filled up very, very, very quickly, and it did almost nothing to stop the knife problem. So what happened was they just decided to release a bunch of them early, and they kind of scrapped the entire plan. The Act changed the point of release for all eligible short-term prisoners from 50% to 40% of their sentence. So if you just go in there and keep your head down, you'll only serve 40% of your sentence. That provided some relief for prisons in the face of overcrowding, but populations have since continued to rise. Sarah Snell, HM Chief Inspector of Prisons for Scotland, said, I have seen a prison system struggling to cope with the number of prisoners it is now being asked to accommodate and the complexity of the prisoner population it has to try to manage safely. She said the SPS had grappled with the long-standing pressure of a prison population that has consistently exceeded design capacity, adding that this has had a long-term toll on staff and governors. It is vital longer-term solutions are adopted swiftly to avoid more short-term options being resorted to, and because long-term systemic change takes time to take effect, she said. Why don't they just build more prisons? I mean, they're bleeding us completely dry with all of this taxation and stuff like that. Why don't they use that money to build more prisons? Why aren't they doing that? Well, first off, that means they need to hire private contractors, and the instant private contractors hear government contract, they triple their quote because they know the government's going to pay it. And then what happens is a lot of fuss and fuckery, and then what ends up happening is, oh yeah, this will take us about a year to build, and then it ends up taking 6 years, and it was supposed to originally be about 90 million, it's now actually up to 620 million, because the government has no idea what the fuck it's doing with anything. Right, that's why. They've no idea what the fuck they're doing. Theresa Medhurst, SPS chief executive, said further action was needed and staff had been managing an extremely complex and far too high population for almost 2 years. She praised their skill and professionalism in the situation. However, we have now reached a new record high, an unfortunate landmark which none of us wanted to see, she said. The level of overcrowding in our establishments was already restricting our staff's ability to build relationships, support rehabilitation, reduce reoffending, and help to build safer communities across Scotland. Build relationships with the prisoners. They don't do that. They don't do that at all. Now it is reaching a level that raises very serious concerns around our ability to keep people safe and secure. A spokesman for the Scottish Government said, "We recognise the serious challenges facing the prison system, which is why the Justice Secretary announced in Parliament emergency proposals to tackle prison overcrowding, with stringent safeguards to protect public safety. Our paramount concern is to ensure that those who work and live in prisons are kept safe, so immediate action is now necessary." Reckless early release. Opposition parties condemned the Scottish Government's management of prisons. Scottish Conservative Justice spokesman Liam Kerr, MSP, blamed SNP ministers for the problems and called for an increase in prison capacity. That's just the part that makes the most sense. The point of prison is to rehabilitate prisoners. It's also as a form of punishment, but I do feel that there should be a heavy dose of rehabilitation involved. Basically, you want the person punished, obviously, but you also want them to toe the fucking line when they get back out in the streets. You want whatever horrible criminal urges this person had to be completely removed from them. You want them a little bit re-educated, to be honest, especially if they're a sexual offender or something like that. So basically, the point is to rehabilitate the person and stop them from committing any crimes again. That should be the point of prisons. But if people are just automatically getting out after 40% of their sentence, are there any checks being put in place to see if this person's rehabilitated? Are they being monitored when they're out in the community? Is any of that stuff being done? We don't know. We don't know because they're keeping all of that stuff very close to their fucking chest and not telling us anything. They're just saying, yeah, we're releasing some people after 40% of their sentence. None of the hate crimers, though. Funnily enough, that was excluded. He said their only solution to overcrowding is the reckless early release of dangerous criminals, which has made our streets less safe and seen many of the same offenders washing straight back up in jail after reoffending. We warned ministers from the start that the early release programme was a desperate sticking plaster idea that was doomed to fail. Yet they plan several more rounds of it in the coming months as Scotland's prisons burst at the seams. Or just build more prisons. But they won't. That would be the sensible thing to do. Scottish Labour's Pauline McNeill MSP described the situation as intolerable for prison officers and staff. These unprecedented figures show that SNP's sticking plaster solutions have failed to deal with the dangerous levels of overcrowding in Scotland's prisons. It is utterly neglectful that the SNP failed to plan for changes to the prison population during their time in government, she said. The crisis in our prisons has been years in the making, but the SNP has failed to get to grips with the root causes, she added. Now, it's been a very long time since I've frequented these places. Prison sucks. It fucking sucks. It's so boring. It's so fucking boring. Like, this is the thing is, right, I've never actually been sent there for a sentence. Right, I was remanded twice. Right, one of them was for something that I did not fucking do, right, and it took a few days, and that was when I was in Berlin, and it took a few days, unfortunately, for my employer to release CCTV footage proving that I was doing a shift at the time that the offence happened. My friends did it. They did it. They did it. They all got 2 years, 3 years, 1 2 year sentence and 2 3 year sentences. Funnily enough, one of those friends I was talking about was the one I was visiting up in Perth. Right, I had nothing to do with it, but it took my employer a few days. It took my employer had to release CCTV, and then I was released. I was kept in Berlin, and I was released for that. The other one I was remanded because basically a fight. Someone stole something from me. I went to his house and I beat him up. That's it. That was it. But then there was another, and I was then released from that on bail, and then I was down the street with a few of my friends. He was down the street with a few of his friends. We bumped into each other, and a big fight started. And he started it. He ran across the road at me, holding like a bottle of bucket in his hand to fight me. I ran across the street at him and I beat the living piss out of him. And of course, when I'm on top of him in the ground and pound, that's when the CCTV cameras turn round. And then he said I started it, and so I'll get remanded in Pullman for 3 weeks. That was it. That was it. I've never been actually sentenced and all that. But yeah, basically, prison's boring. Prison's boring, and it fucking sucks. And it's not fun. You do get to catch up with old friends though, which is nice, and all that. But yeah, but that was a very very long time ago. So things are obviously like much worse now. Much worse now. And I'm going to say that this is a combination of people coming to this country and doing a bunch of shit because they're just not integrated into our culture at all. And I'm going to guess it's a lot of crimes against women, and that's why they're ending up in there. And it's also because we decided that lots of different types of speech is illegal, where we're jailing people for tweets and Facebook posts, and people are getting their collars felt for expressing the wrong opinions, not state-approved opinions and stuff like that. I'm going to guess it's that. Right, and releasing violent people and dangerous criminals early is not, they're not being rehabilitated. Like, some prisoners, whenever, oh, you've been sentenced to 7 years, prisoners are like, 3? Yeah, I can do 3. Might even be earlier than 3. And I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. Whatever sentence you get, that's not the sentence you're doing. Right, and that's dumb. That's not the way that it should work. Yeah, prison should serve as a punishment, but primarily I think it should serve as rehabilitation. Because it's not enough just to punish a guy for 8 years and then dump him back into the middle of the public. Right, that's not good. You need to make sure that that person is rehabilitated so that they're not going to commit any further crimes. There are certain crimes that I don't give a fuck about. Right. Funnily enough, it's all the ones that I've been mostly convicted for, which is fighting. See if two men are in the street and they agree to have a fight, that's nobody's business at that point. That's nobody's business at that point. People shouldn't be jailed for that. They've both agreed to settle their differences like men and gentlemen, hopefully. Queensberry rules, right? But still, it's just dumb, some of the stuff that people get jailed for. I know people that have been jailed for stuff that they did not do. But even though I was with them and I was with them, they did not do that shit. I wasn't allowed to give evidence because I was a known accomplice. Yeah, the prison system's shit. But still, I think that's the reason why things are getting so bad lately. But I mean, the simple solution is build more prisons. Just build more prisons. You've got the money. You're taxing us into oblivion, so where the fuck is all the money going? Migrant hotels.